call this Rules and Research meeting to order. It's 7:04 p.m. I don't think we're doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Has anybody been doing that in other meetings?
We have.
Okay, so I'll call for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to
and
the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay, if the clerk will take the roll.
Bruce Elstein,
Here.
Eric Paulson,
Here.
Bill Mecca, Joanne Glasser-Orenstein,
Here.
Donna Seidel, Steve Lemoyne,
Here.
Joe Garrix,
Here.
and Carl Massaro.
Okay, we have a quorum. And we have the first resolution will be TC 28-85. Will Mr. Lemoyne bring that to the floor, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Resolution TC 28-85. Be it resolved that Kathleen Champion of 39 Undercliff Road, being the same, is hereby appointed to the Western Regional Tourism District Board for a term extending to July 9th, 2023.
I'll second Joanne Glasser-Orenstein.
Okay, I understand Ms. Champion is on the call or on the meeting.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving on the Western Regional Tourism District Board?
Sure. My name is Kathleen Champion. I've been a communications professional for over 20 years. My experience includes corporate communications to broadcast news for ABC News. I've also volunteered over 10 years on various nonprofit boards, and as recently volunteered my communication skills to the town of Trumbull in the First Selectman's Office, the Parks and Recs Department, and the Economic Community Development Office. And I'm just looking forward to serving the town even further and use my skills as well as my knowledge of economic development and try to bring it all together.
Very good. You sound very well qualified. Could you just state your party affiliation for the record?
Yes, I'm a registered Democrat.
Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Champion? Thank you for your willingness to serve. If anybody has any questions.
I have a question.
Yep.
I'd just like to understand a little better what the Regional Tourism District Board is and what it does.
You're asking me, Mr. Lemoyne, or?
Yes, that
Kathy?
would be fine.
Yeah.
Kathy, would you like to speak about that, or I can fill things in if you need?
Oh, no, I feel I can speak to it.
Thank you.
It's, the state is divided into 3 different districts: Western, Central, and Eastern. And so there are a variety, many towns in the Western District. There's Fairfield County, and I believe Litchfield County is included in our area. It existed years ago, and then it was the funding disappeared, and now it's been resurrected again by Governor Lamont. And the role is to bring tourism to your area. And the governor, unless he's going to change his mind, has allocated a couple $1 million to this. And so our goal, of course, is to bring as many dollars to the town of Trumbull as possible.
Thank you for helping me understand that.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or concerns that Ms. Champion can address for us? Hearing none, I'll call it to a vote. I think it has to be a roll call vote because we're on Zoom.
It does. Bruce Elstein,
Yes?
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser-Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
Yes.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Paulson, would you please bring TC 28-86 to the floor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, happily. Resolution TC 28-86, be it resolved that the building committee rules as adopted by the town council on November 10, 1981, being the same, are hereby amended by repeal of the last two sentences of section 15.
Is there a second?
I'll second Joanne Glasser-Orenstein.
Attorney Shopik, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. Since the November 10, 1981 was my last night on the town council, when this was adopted, I can tell you that the need for a bound book, a bound copy of all of the quote unquote doings of the building committee really has become outdated. And a couple of the building committees that are presently winding up had asked us, do we really need to do this? And how do we do this? Because we've got reams and reams and reams and reams of things that are already posted on the town website. So that we felt that so as not to create a task that wasn't necessary, that's why we're asking to delete those two sentences. The building committee rules themselves really could use some further looking at, further revisions, but this was the immediate problem. This committee could take it up at a future meeting, take up the rules altogether.
Are there any questions or concerns?
I just want to be sure that the two sentences in question are all books and records of said committee shall be bound and submitted to the town council prior to the discharge, blah, blah. And upon approval of all said books and records, the town council shall discharge the committees. Those are the two sentences.
Those are the
right?
two sentences, yes, Joanne.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Mr. Lemoyne?
Yes, with all the committees we do have in town, I'm just curious why the building committee is singled out on this and not other committees as well, who probably have to abide by the same laws.
No, not necessarily. These all pertain to, this is Dan Shopik again. These all pertain to construction of various projects, and where building committees are required for purposes of overseeing the project. So I don't think, for instance, that what you have as building committee rules would apply to the redistricting committee or something like that. It doesn't follow.
Okay, Steve Lemoyne again. So correct me if I'm wrong, then the aquatics committee falls under the building committee?
The aquatics committee is a building committee, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. Ms. Mascroni?
Unmuted myself, sorry. Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser-Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
Yes,
and Joe Garrix.
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Okay. Ms. Glasser-Orenstein, would you please bring resolution TC 28-87 to the floor?
Sorry, my dogs are barking like crazy right now. Maybe someone else can read it.
Sure. Mr. Garrix, are you able to read, or are you in transit?
I am in transit, so I respectfully request to pass on this one.
Okay. Mr. Lemoyne, will you please bring resolution TC 28-87 to the floor?
certainly, Mr. Chair. Resolution TC 28-87. Be it resolved that the town council of the town of Trumbull hereby establishes a task force to be known as the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force. The purpose of this task force shall be to strengthen Trumbull's identity as a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. The task force shall identify programmatic, community, legislative practices with regard to racial, social, sexual, and gender equity and diversity. The task force shall consist of 8 members who shall be appointed by the town council. The council shall first appoint 4 members whose term will run until the first Monday of December 2022, and 4 members whose terms will run until the first Monday in December 2024. Thereafter, all appointments shall be for a term of 4 years each. The task force shall report to the town council at least quarterly and shall otherwise make recommendations for actions as frequently as it deems appropriate.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second Joanne Glasser Orenstein.
Okay, I'll open the floor to discussion.
Mr. Chair, I think you may want to, this is Dan Shopik. You may want to hear from either Ashley or Joy, who have basically brought this to our attention and probably could best explain what it is that they would like to see happen.
Okay, Ms. Cologne, would you like to speak to this? Or
Sure,
Ms.
I did see Mr. Lemoyne raise his hand though, so I want to be respectful of the process. Is there something that you wanted to share before we shared?
This is Steve Lemoyne. No, I would be glad to hear what you have to say, and I'll fill in after that.
Okay, so great. The idea of being equitable in terms of fairness or impartiality, this idea of equity of treatment is something that's really important as we move forward in this town and community, and we begin to have representation that reflects the community at large. It's my hope that this is a very active and productive committee that moves us forward with this idea of positive conversation that leads to positive action here in Trumbull, affecting all citizens in Trumbull.
And if I could add to that quickly, I think that Joy and myself, and certainly a few others, hope that this committee provides, this task force provides a group of members and hopefully the community at large with the opportunity to take stock of the policies and practices that we have in place already, and those policies and practices and community programming that we'd like to see put into place in the future. I think there's a lot of eagerness and willingness by community members to engage in this type of conversation. And it's certainly my hope that we will find some new individuals to sit on this committee over the next month or two as we appoint members. And, the only other thing I'll say is I think it's really important to note that it is not a task force aimed just at racial equity and diversity. It's a task force aimed at racial, social, sexual, and gender equity and diversity, because we need to look across the board at how we can continue to ensure Trumbull is a welcoming community for everyone. And I know both Joy and I are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I think this is a very important initiative for the town of Trumbull, and I'm sure our residents will be rewarded with the results of the positive communications that this will bring. Having said that, does anybody else want to add or question this resolution, or either Ms. Cologne or Ms. Guadiana?
I would.
Mr. Lemoyne.
Thank you, Steve Lemoyne. I got to say, I was surprised to see the need for a task force. I know the Trumbull Police Department does an awesome job. My experience in the community has been nothing but positive, caring, where everyone's included. And when I hear the word task force, the first thing that comes to mind is there's a problem. And I was taken back by that. And I've been giving this a lot of thought since I first heard of this. And I got to say, it disturbs me. Let me just mention a few other things. since as far as I know, we don't have a suspected problem in any of the areas outlined in the resolution, why isn't a statement on the town's webpage enough to go on record to our community with the expectations we have as a community for the fair treatment of everyone who lives in it? I'm not sure of the need of a task force. Secondly, the write-up in this resolution includes these words, and I'm going to read from it. The task force shall, that word shall is very strong. The task force shall identify practices with regard to equality and diversity on a number of, and it lists this on a number of fronts within the resolution. It sounds like they're being tasked to look for something that's not on the up and up. At least that's the way it comes across to me. I've always been a subscriber to the school of thought that if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Secondly, the task force is to be comprised of 8 members. The town council is to appoint the 8 members. In other words, a Democratic majority is to appoint 8 members to a task force to enforce diversity and equality. That just seems ironic that a majority party would be responsible for assigning 8 individuals who are supposed to be, I don't know, unbiased to a task force to enforce unbiased issues. I mean, that's just ironic to me. Unless you can assure that such a task force would be representative of all people in town, you'll end up with a task force that is biased, which will defeat the purpose of the task force to begin with. This is why a biased body cannot be allowed to choose the task force.
Okay.
So, you know
Thank you
what's
for that.
ironic? You know what's ironic? Mr. Lemoyne, you're sitting in front of the American flag.
Yes, I am.
You are. I love my country and I love my flag. And I have family members who served in a multitude of ways to this country, myself included as an educator. Ensuring equity, and that's the word, equity for all citizens that make up this wonderful town is something I would think that you would like, something that you would think is important.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Sure.
And then I'd like to add to remark on some of your points, Mr. Lemoyne, as well.
Okay. It sounds to me like what you're saying is we don't have that. I feel that we do. We do have that. We have a great town with great people who respect each other, who include each other. And I just see this as a witch hunt task force. And it bothers me because this community is not made up of that element of people that needs to be screened, I guess, for lack of a better word.
So
If I could just,
I'm sorry. So
but
just a quick question for Mr. Lemoyne. So if there's no issue and there's no problem, then the task force shouldn't be a problem. And you should sit on it with us.
The task force is a problem because it's going to be made up of 8 individuals. And like any other committee and commission in this town, I can guarantee you it's going to be made up of a minority of the minor party. It's going to be outweighed by the majority party. And you don't have diversity when you have that kind of makeup.
Perhaps
And I would,
involved would be a good way to fix that if you see that as an issue.
Well, I do have a way to fix it. And this is just an opinion of mine. As a matter of fact, I would, I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution.
Okay,
Okay, once again, Steve Lemoyne. I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution as follows. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to read it so I don't leave anything out. And Margaret, if you need me to email this to you for clarity and accuracy, I'd be glad to do that tomorrow. I'd like in the resolution to insert down way toward the bottom where it says, thereafter, all appointments shall be for a term of 4 years each. After that sentence, insert, the town council will take 4 recommended inputs from the Democratic Town Committee, 4 recommended inputs from the Republican Town Committee, and 4 recommended inputs from unaffiliated parties of the community. In the case there's more than 4 submittals from the unaffiliated, 2 members of the Republican and 2 members of the Democratic Town Council will choose the 4 to represent the unaffiliated segment of the community. From this slate of 12, the Town Council will vote on 8 people to serve on the task force. I see that as a fair and equal way of ensuring that if there is going to be a task force, that the 8 members who serve truly do come from different perspectives and viewpoints in this community.
okay, is there a second? Hearing none, I think the motion fails, I'm afraid.
We have to take a vote.
Well, there's with no second, I don't think there's a vote.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Point of clarification, Mr. Elstein, I know I'm not a voting body here this evening. Are you getting a motion for his amendment or for the initial idea of the task force?
The amendment only
The
at this
amendment.
point.
Thank you. I know we have viewers at home. I want to make sure.
Mr. Elstein, can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
I think this is Joanne Glasser Orenstein. It is a lovely town. I've lived here for almost 30 years. And it's also a town that's, I believe, 4% people of color. I am of the majority of representing the majority in the town. And I would tell you that I have not experienced hardship because I'm a white woman in this town. However, I do think to say it doesn't exist in this town is either naive or, well, let's just say it's naive, because it does, my experience, and there is all kinds of there are all kinds of people in this town that are not always welcoming to different people that are different than they are. And I think that given the protests that have gone on recently, the one that happened in Trumbull, that was, in my mind, very successful and very peaceful and also very informative, highlighted a lot of the problems that do exist in this town that we try to pretend aren't here. Because we don't, as people of privilege, we don't experience those things. But, and I mean, just in the way that the board, that children are educated in Trumbull High School, I think can be expanded upon, to look at how they look at American history, for example. But there are lots of things that people of color in this town experience that the other 96% of the town does not experience. And to say it's insignificant would be incorrect in my mind. I understand your discomfort with the wording of the task force or saying shall. You know, perhaps we can amend the wording to say that, you know, that the task force will research or study or be committed to new ideas to strengthen Trumbull's identity. I don't know it, but the word shall doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, I think we could change that particular word. But I think it is necessary to have this task force because I think this is a problem in Trumbull, just like it's a problem across the country.
Mr. Elstein, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Guardiano.
When we were putting this together, and we can sit here and debate the word shall, I think, you know, till the cows come home. But when we were putting this together, the purpose wasn't to sit here and rack up a list of problems that exist in this town. I think all you need to do is go onto social media to see that problems exist in this town, whether it's surrounding racism or LGBTQ plus controversies over flags being raised. There's no doubt that those things exist, but that was not the point of putting together this task force. The point in putting this together was to make sure that when we look across the board at all the ways that our town operates, at all the community programming that exists, at whether there are legislative practices or policies that we can put into place, that we just aim to be better. And, you know, as a town, whether we're sitting here talking about adding new buildings or adding a task force that looks at equity and diversity, the goal should just be to make it better. It doesn't mean that a problem necessarily had to exist. So, you know, I want to be clear that this is not a committee whose origin stemmed from the fact that mountains of problems exist and we need to point blame and, you know, change those things. It's to look forward and how can we continue to be a better and better and better place. I also want to add that, you know, Mr. Limway mentioned police. Police is one piece of what we do in this town. It would certainly be my hope that we look at education, that we look at the police, that we look at the makeup of our boards and commissions to make sure that they're diverse, to make sure that the library's, stock of books and programming is diverse, that we're doing everything we can in terms of economic development to encourage people of different races and ethnicities and genders and, you know, sexual preferences to own businesses in this town, to look at the arts and the cultures in the town of Trumbull. So I think there's a plethora of areas that we can be looking at. And the last thing to say is that, you know, when we talk about race, you know, Ms. Colon is the first person of color to be elected to the town council in the town of Trumbull. We should be striving to enhance our boards, our commissions, and our elected offices, again, across every scope of diversity that we can imagine. And so having this task force, you know, that's just one piece of this.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Elstein, it's Tony Cinto. Can I ask a question, if you don't mind?
Sure.
This might be for Ashley or for Joy, I'm not sure. Have you guys had an approved budget for this task force?
No, not at this point. At this point, it's a task force that's being formed just like any other committee or would be formed, and Mr. Shopik might be able to speak to this more than I can, but it's a committee, and if they ever wanted money to do anything, they would need to come forward and ask.
Well, normally committees just need money for a secretary to take notes and stuff.
Mr. Shopik might be able to answer that better than I can.
Normally that's what happens. I just thought I'd ask. It's not a big deal. Just if somebody can answer it, that'd be, because if it's going to be a long-term committee, you're saying 2-3 years or for a long period of time, you're going to need to get a person to take notes, a clerk. So the clerk, unless they work gratis, they're going to have to get paid. So they're going to have to put that in the budget or in the town council budget or something like that. So I just thought I'd ask. Thanks very much, Bruce. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. And I'll just add, I think that I'm happy that I also believe that the town is a good town, like Mr. Lemoyne. But I do, if I've learned anything in the last few years, is there's an undercurrent that we need to be more sensitive to, and that we can do good for the town by enacting a task force that promotes equality, promotes the issues of the underserved in a way that brings those issues more to light. So I'm definitely in favor of this task force. Would anybody else like to speak to it before we take a vote? Okay, hearing none, I'll call it to a vote.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser-Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrix.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
moving on to the last resolution of the evening. Ms. Glasser-Orenstein, would you please bring resolution TC 28-88 to the floor, please?
Resolution TC 28-88, be it resolved that a special election shall be held on November 3rd, 2020 in the town of Trumbull to fill the vacant Board of Education seat created by the resignation of Kathleen Fearon for the remainder of the term ending the first Monday in December 2021. The town clerk and the registrars of voters are directed to establish the ballots, polling places, and dates for party endorsement and a primary election, if necessary, pursuant to law.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call it to a vote.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser-Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
Yes.
Joe Garrix.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, that completes our agenda. Is there any other business to be brought to our attention?
Yes, I have something to bring up. Since this last resolution was a yes vote, do we need to be thinking about a primary date?
I think they put it in the resolution. Oh, the primary date, I'm sorry.
Primary, yes.
Do you want me to respond to that? This is Dan Shopik. The dates get scheduled. First, there have to be, the dates will be scheduled between now and November in accordance with number of days that are required for notice and such. First, the parties will need to nominate. Notice will go out to the parties to nominate. Then if there's any opportunity for people to primary, there'll be opportunity for anybody who wants to petition to get on the ballot as a non-party affiliate. That's out there. The dates were worked out so that it does fall within the prescribed number of days, and the election can be held the same day as the national election in November.
Thank you.
But to Mr. Lemoyne's point, do we need to set a date as a committee? Or
No.
the council need to set the date,
No.
or is that done by the registrar of voters?
That's done between the state of Connecticut, the registrar, and the town clerk.
Mr. Lemoyne, does that satisfy you, your question?
I believe so. I believe if there's to be a primary, it'll be included.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.
I guess,
Okay.
and the appropriate word would have been among, not between. We have 3 entities.
Okay.
Okay, any other business to discuss? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Would anyone like
I'll
to make
make
a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Wanna
do
stay
it,
on?
Joanne.
Is there a second?
Eric Paulson, second.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.